Good morning, Obehi, and to all your followers. I'm Dr. LaTrese Adkins. I reside in Dallas, Texas. I've been writing grants professionally since 1998. I do consider myself a professional grant writer. Of all the skill sets that I've developed over the lifetime of my career, it's the skill set that I enjoy the most, and it's the skill set that has connected me in the most meaningful ways to other people.
All right. Thank you so much for that, dear LaTrese. Now, some people don't even know what is meant by grant. Can you explain that to us, please?
Great question. So there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I guess I should start, Obehi, with what a grant isn't, and then back my way into what it actually is. Some people misunderstand grants as free money. My mom and my grandma, and if you grew up in a community of color, they were very clear to tell you there's no such thing as free money. There's a catch. There's a something on the other end. So it's not just free money. A grant is a financial covenant. I love that word covenant coming from my Christian background. And a covenant is a promised connection, a bond, if you will. And so a grant is this financial covenant. If you don't like the religious overtones, I'll use the word contract. A grant is a financial contract. The funder has the money, or the purse, as I call it, and the grantee, or the person who received the grant, has the purpose. So when purpose meets purse, they form a bond. That bond is a financial covenant or a financial contract, an agreement that if I invest this money, if I give this money, if I make this money available to you, you will fulfill this stated purpose. Our agreement is that you're going to fulfill the purpose using the purse that I'm providing for you, the money that I provided for you. So it's not free money. It's an agreement. It's a covenant. It's a contract between the funder and the grantee or the recipient. And the basis of that relationship is the receipt of monies in order to fulfill a stated purpose. That's a grant.
Oh, right. That's great. So when are grants usually available?
Great question. So most grants are on what we call funding cycles, meaning that the majority of grants tend to be recurring. Grant season, when a lot of grants are available, tends to be the early spring. So we're talking mid to late March to the end of summer. So we're talking about January. So between March, I said January, I meant September, the end of summer. So between March and September, a lot of grants are available. And when a grant becomes available, we call that the funding cycle. You can think of it like seasons. We have 4 seasons, no matter where you live on the globe, what hemisphere, what continent you're on. There are 4 seasons. Now, the seasons in Antarctica may not be as diverse as the seasons in Maine, right? Because it's Antarctica, but Antarctica still has a summer, right? And so these seasons, these cycles are reoccurring. And the majority of grants are typically available between March and September, but that's not the only cycle. That's not the only season of grants. I'll give you another example. The federal government, for the most part, the fiscal year of the federal government is from October 1st to January 30th. And so there are a lot of different funding agencies that constitute the U.S. federal government, and the funding cycles of those agencies differ. So you can't think, oh my goodness, I only have from March to September to apply. Well, it depends on the funder, the person making the monies available. But more than likely, they are on a cycle. They usually announce their grants in this month and they're available to this month. And that cycle repeats itself every year. Every now and again, a special amount of money becomes available, and those grants are not on a cycle. Case in point, when our country was without warning hit with a global pandemic, as everyone else was in the world, right? Well, our presidents, first former President Trump and now current President Biden, they've made monies available. President Trump called his the CARES Act. CARES, CARES, CARES Act. And then President Biden continued to make monies available, but he didn't call his the CARES Act. He called it the American Rescue Plan, I believe. And so the grants that were available under the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan were specific to some situations that were going on at the time, right? And so those grants aren't on a cycle because they were special. So if you don't have a special incident that creates pockets of money and buckets of money for people to compete for, but it's just annual or usual, you'll want to follow the funding cycle. When that particular organization, entity, agency makes their grants available from this time to this time, you need to familiarize yourself with the cycle. But you also need to stay abreast of when special monies become available that won't be on a cycle. They only exist because they are tied to a certain circumstance, like the pandemic.
All right. Now, another thing I was thinking is, what do you want to tell us about the eligibility of people who can be qualified for grant? Because I want to believe now that it's not for everybody, no?
Now, usually, you're absolutely right. Usually, the majority of grants are reserved for what we call 501c3 organizations. 501c3 is an IRS code. That code means that this organization isn't for profit, but it exists for the public welfare and the greater good. While a 501c3 can make money, can have profits, the point, the bottom line, the purpose isn't to make money. It's either to provide a good or service that the public needs, or it is to help the public in ways that will better the quality of life, if you will. So let me give you some examples. The American Red Cross is a nonprofit. They respond to emergency situations and they help families who have been victims of hurricanes and floods, etc. A nonprofit, the Susan Komen Foundation. They want to make people aware of breast cancer and increase our awareness and raise money to find a cure, race for the cure, right? Boy Scouts of America is another one. There are many county hospitals and hospitals across the country that are nonprofit hospitals, meaning they're not in it to make money. They're in it to provide a good or service. And so typically to be eligible for a grant, you have to be an organization, an entity that is serving a cause, a greater good. And even if you're providing a product, it's not to sell the product, it's to, again, provide a service or a good. And the sale of a product is allowable. Some people get confused and think if you have a nonprofit, that means you don't make money. Well, there are nonprofits that make multi-million dollars a year and their CEO makes $1 million a year. So it's not that you can't make money, it's that the purpose is not to make money. The purpose is not to profit. The purpose is to provide that good or service. And so that basically defines who's going to be eligible for a grant. Rarely are businesses eligible for grants, but during the pandemic, we did see some monies become available for particular industries. There were monies available for people in the restaurant industry. There was money available for people who were in entertainment and theater and the arts, because the government was saying, hey, we shut down all recreation. We shut down all entertainment. We shut down dining. How are people going to survive if that was their livelihood and career? And so our president put money aside so that those individuals, those artists, those restaurateurs, those caterers, those food truck owners could apply for money and be able to survive. They even had forgivable loans where you could ask for a loan, paycheck protection plan or PPP, and then pay your workers as well as yourself. And then you will apply for that loan to be forgiven. That loan was functioning like a grant. You received monies to achieve a purpose and you didn't have to repay it. So it functioned like a grant, but it was called a forgivable loan. For the most part, nonprofit organizations who have the tax status of 501c3, the majority of the recipients of grant monies, but there are occasions when others receive grants. 501, I think 501(c)(3)(b), and then some businesses at certain times can receive money. But most of the time, it's because you are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and that was determined by the IRS.
And that's great for people that are in this area and they need money, because of course we all need money to be able to run our activities. No, really, that if you are a purely business initiative, you need to look for a way to raise your money, and then you talk of profit. Then okay, you're going to pay back and the rest of it.